Is Japan a really safe place to visit? Well, let's find out. The countries we live on are what we call plate tectonics. There are eight major tectonic plates: the North American plate, the South American plate, the Eurasian, African, Indo-Australian, Nazca, Pacific, and Antarctic. The main reasons for tectonic plates are convection currents, energy into lava, gravity, and the Earth's rotation.
The most common way to measure an earthquake is by using the Richter scale. The size of an earthquake is measured by the magnitude. This is determined by the logarithm of the amplitude of waves recorded by a seismograph. The amplitude is the height of the waves recorded on the seismograph, and the logarithm is simply a computer calculation. Usually, a Richter scale gives whole numbers and decimal fractions. For example, a 2.3 magnitude earthquake wouldn't be classified as a strong earthquake. A 5.3 magnitude earthquake would be classified as a moderate earthquake. A strong earthquake would be classified as 7.0, while anything above 8.0 would be classified as catastrophic. This is just an example of the world map, showing in the intensity of some of Japan's earthquakes. You probably see so many lines because that's how much earthquakes Japan experiences in a year, let alone a day. But what is the rate of plate movement in Japan? And how do you calculate it, I hear you ask? Well, let's do the maths. To calculate the rate of plate movement in Japan, we first must analyse the rate of plate movement for the tectonic plates that Japan sits on. So, I've done some research and I found that the Eurasian plate, excuse my messy writing there, the Eurasian plate has 0.95 of rate movement, that the Pacific plate has a rate movement of 8.1, the Philippine plate has plate movement of 6.35, and the North American plate has one of 1.15. So, to calculate the rate of plate movement, I must add all these scores together. So, I'm going to add these scores together. Now, because we're working out the average, we need to divide that by the number of amounts that we are adding or working with. So, all over 4. Now, I just punched that into my calculator and I got an answer of 4.1375. So therefore, that is the rate of plate movement in Japan. Something to think about, eh?
Japan experiences 1,500 earthquakes a year. That's about 4 earthquakes per day. Japan's earthquakes mainly occur on the northern islands of Hokkaido and Honshu. Notable earthquakes include the 1923 Great Kanto earthquake, which had a magnitude of 7.9. This was followed by a 10-meter high tsunami and many landslides. Over 100,000 people died as a result of that earthquake. The worst earthquake in Japan's history occurred in March 2011, when a 9.0 million earthquake hit the Tohoku region in the northern part of Honshu.
This caused large amounts of damage and caused a large tsunami to hit the region. Nearly 16,000 people were reported dead, and the tsunami caused a level 7 nuclear accident at the Fukushima nuclear power plant. To this day, the region is still full of radioactive waste. This was known as a megathrust earthquake, where one tectonic plate is heavily forced underneath by another, usually creating an earthquake of a magnitude of 9.0 or more. Japan has over 100 active volcanoes, more than any other country. Again, the reason for this is the Pacific Ring of Fire. Japan's volcanoes are located on 5 subdivision zones. These subdivision zones are located on the edge of plate tectonics. The seawater underneath the meeting plates is losing water to the mantle. This causes the rocks to melt into magma and form volcanoes.
However, few are still active. Japan's most famous volcano is Mount Fuji. Mount Fuji is Japan's tallest mountain and is still active, even though it hasn't had a major eruption since 1707. It is still active but has a low risk of eruption. Japan's last volcanic eruption was in 2013 by Mount Nishima, which created a new island from its eruption. For the past 15 years, there has been a volcanic eruption every 1 to 2 years. Japan's most active volcano is Mount Aso, located on the island of Kyushu. Out of its 5 craters, only one is still active and has been for the past 70 years.
So in conclusion, Japan is not the safest place in the world to visit. In fact, it's probably one of the most unsafest, due to its location in the world along the Pacific Ring of Fire. However, probably the most unsafest place in Japan to visit would be the northern islands of Hokkaido and Honshu, particularly the northern part of Honshu and probably the whole island of Hokkaido. If travelling to Japan, avoid these areas.